contribute a lot to it, but even without those two things, the majority of our riders are going to work, medical, and school day in, day out. Okay. Sorry. We'll just go with this. Let's see. Okay, so a little bit about who uses DART. As we look at who is using DART, this is really the most needy in our community. In fact, 61% of our riders don't have a valid driver's license. So a lot of folks either are coming from other countries, are coming out of prison, are students. There's a variety of reasons, but 61% don't have an option to drive. Of that, also that same 61% don't have a vehicle in their household, and then the next 25% only have one vehicle. And so if you think about that, almost 90% of our riders either have no or one vehicle in their household. In addition, if you look here, the majority of riders, the vast sum of them, are making less than $50,000 in their household for a year. So again, what we are serving right now is the most needy in our community. I believe there is a future where we can have a transit system that drives economic development even more and gets more choice riders. But what we have today is, again, meeting those basic needs. And of course, not surprisingly, the ridership is also quite diverse. And even with public transit being a more affordable option for a lot of folks, we still have people who cannot afford to ride. And we have a program which we have partnered with Polk County and others on to try and help make fares more accessible for those who can't afford their bus fare. And so we began the Ride to Thrive program last July. And if someone comes to us with a food assistance, housing assistance, or workforce assistance qualification, then they can get a bus pass at a reduced half-price fare. And in the last year, we are up to almost about 900 people participating in that program, and the vast majority of them do live in the city of Des Moines. One thing to consider as we look to the future and we look to where we are today is how our population growth is comparing with the service we have on the road. So the orange bars you see there are the number of service hours, meaning every hour an operator is driving a bus on the road. And we've changed, of course, the ways we deliver that service, but the number of hours as a whole is just back now, just above where we were in 2009. I know some of you were around when we had to go through major cuts in 2010 and 2011 following the 2008 recession, and we are just back to that point now. Obviously, some of that does have to do still with our COVID recovery, but if you look at where our population is going, our transit service isn't keeping up. And we continue to get requests for new needs. Obviously, we have a lot of development happening both within Des Moines and regionally. We get a lot of requests. Top requests is for more service to the airport. Right? And as we look at the future of the airport, we know and believe that will be important. Then there's new areas of development too as our communities continue to develop in Ankeny, West Des Moines, Altoona, and throughout the region. So we get a lot of requests that we are unable to meet in our current budget situation. And so want to give you a little bit of background on the funding challenges we have, some of the things we've tried, and the decisions in front of both the Commission and the Des Moines City Council. So you all know, it's no surprise, everything is costing a lot more. The cost of buses has gone up, fuel is almost twice what it was, wages are going up, and we're still struggling to get operators. So it's a hard cost world for us right now, just like so many others. We have also lost some revenue from that we used to get through the backfill, through the multi-residential rollback, through some contracted Medicaid trips, and then we did lose some fare during the pandemic as well. So there's been a multitude of things where revenue's going down and costs are going up, and so the Commission has been trying to figure out how to address that. Certainly one of the things I take very seriously is the stewardship of the taxpayer dollar. We have a multitude of ways we measure that, but one that we look at and compare with peer agencies is our cost effectiveness, meaning as an agency, how do we compare with other transit agencies and what that operating cost per boarding of the bus is. And you can see here where we are the purple line. The others are anonymized given data sharing, privacy information agreements between those agencies. But we do look at this in a multitude of other places to say and look at ways we can be efficient. And for those of you who have served on the Commission, you know efficiency is a conversation we have all the time and are continue to look for ways to be more more efficient with our funds, but also be creative in how we're coming up with additional funds. So some of the ways we do that, we have greatly increased advertising revenue on the buses since 2015. And so advertising revenue has about tripled since that time. So you probably see and notice a lot more advertising on the buses, but that's one of the sources we can control and help to try and bring in more. We also, on the right, you can see several residential properties. We have what are called unlimited access partnerships. The Polk County has one where your employees, you have a partnership with us and your employees can ride for free as a benefit to working there. One thing we've seen since the pandemic is more residential partnerships where housing leaders are offering this as a benefit to their residents. And so we've really appreciated that, again, continuing to make that connection between housing and transportation. And also things are looking different since the pandemic. And so the residential partnerships are a way we're doing that. And then always looking for, again, additional grants and other things. The Principal Foundation is helping us with a few pilot programs to see how transportation can reduce barriers. And Bravo, if you've noticed, we have almost 20 art shelters within the community now, and have really appreciated the partnership of Bravo and others within the community to help see those going up throughout the region to both offer a warmer place for people to wait for the bus, but also something that makes our community more beautiful at the same time.
Could you back up on screen there?
Yeah. Well, maybe. Oh, how do I go the other direction? Okay. Previous. Thank you. What? Okay. Sorry.
I don't know what it looks like.
See, also, let's do that. And you wanted to look at this one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The blue line is what, break even?
The blue line is the average amongst all the agencies.
Okay, so what's that telling us again?
So what that tells us is that on average, the cost per boarding, so the cost we control, this has nothing to do with revenue, this is just the cost, meaning all the expenses we spend on an operator, on the bus, on fuel, on administration, it averages out to this amount per boarding, and we compare that with other agencies because that is a way that we measure and look at cost effectiveness.
Oh, okay, all right, thanks.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. So one of the other things we're looking at and have been doing is obviously testing new service models. And one of those service models is on demand with smaller vehicles. And so you might have seen that we started our first pilot in Ankeny, and it has been so popular that we are up to about 5 buses in Ankeny running their DART on-demand service. And we are also now doing new pilots in West Des Moines and Riverbend, and so testing to see how that helps in other communities, or to fill gaps in our community. One thing to know about on-demand, sometimes people say, well, I see the smaller bus, it's costing us less then, right? It's a smaller bus. The challenge of on-demand is it isn't as efficient in terms of how it picks people up. So on-demand is a great service to, again, fill gaps, places where it doesn't make sense, we're not busy enough to have a fixed route bus. It doesn't make sense for that, but we need to provide some level of transit service. And so this is a way we have been testing this and looking at what this looks like in terms of costs, and we get about the most passengers we get is about 3 to 4 passengers per hour. And the most efficient microtransit service in the country only gets about 4.25 passengers per hour. And so microtransit is, again, great for carrying a couple of passengers and getting them where they need to go. But when you have a large ridership number, it doesn't keep up in terms of fixed route really is more cost effective. So if you look on average, the DART fixed route carries 17 passengers per hour. Again, sorry, on demand is 1 to 3 passengers per hour. So again, we get lots of questions about could you replace that empty bus with on-demand service? And there are places, and again, Ankeny is one we looked at, but really it's more about filling gaps. And once you get to needing more than that 3 passengers per hour, fixed route becomes a more cost-effective way of doing things. So again, I believe both are important to our future, and both are important to meeting needs. There's just a different time and place for each of them as we look to the future. So a little bit more into the specifics of our budget. As a whole, we're facing 2 challenges. Again, costs have gone up, revenues have not. And we have had COVID funds for the last few years to plug that gap, and that is coming to an end. So now the gap is needing to be solved with local funds. And there's two decisions there. One is the decision of the commission and really primarily our suburban communities to fund the deficit, and I'll show you in another slide what that looks like. And that involves a property tax increase for all of those communities. The city of Des Moines has a different decision in front of them because they are already at that property tax cap. And so they have a gap there to fill without, they didn't have a revenue source in place until this last legislative session. So I'll get to that. The commission has agreed to fully fund service for the suburban communities for FY25, and so that means, you can see this second column there, that means that property taxes will be going up, the levy on average, it's different for each community because of how the property tax formula works, but anywhere from 1 to 7 cents depending on the community. Again, that is just a couple of dollars for a $200,000 home. We have committed to, we will be redesigning service. Again, we know travel patterns have changed since COVID. We know we need to continue to look at doing things differently. And so that is one of our commitments for the next year. And prior to the next budget decision, we will be looking at that redesign. We also looked for places we could find one-time funds to help with the problem so that it's kind of a kitchen sink, all the things we can do to try and look to address this issue. And so we have found some capital and reserve funds that we can use to make that impact over the next year less. We believe we have that problem, we have the path forward on that. Then the other second issue is the city of Des Moines. Like I mentioned, the city of Des Moines is at that 95-cent cap, but their portion of what they pay to DART continually increases in the years to come, and there's two reasons for that. The property tax formula increases the city of Des Moines contribution as to DART to 49%. I believe this year they're at 23%. And so the city of Des Moines receives about 70% of the service in terms of hours on the road. So the property tax formula that was agreed upon puts them at 49%. Well, that phases in until 2029. So each year the amount they owe to DART goes up. But they have this cap. So last year, the legislature did approve that the city of Des Moines could increase their franchise fee by 2.5%, so increase it from 5% to 7.5%, if that money was either going to reduce property taxes and to maintain service in transit. So they have that option in front of them. They will have to decide whether to use that option. So you can see here, this just shows the gap that the city of Des Moines has faced historically. So this year, that gap they paid was $1.4 million, and that they used park and ride funding to use that, but that is another pot of money that is coming to an end. So as they look to the options in front of them, there is, again, a 2.5% franchise fee option, and that would reduce property taxes for several years if they implemented that. Now you can see where their total contribution goes up dramatically in the years to come. So those property taxes, if they fully implement it, continue to go back up, but they go down for a while. The franchise fee impact would be, again, 2.5%, so $2.50 on a $100 utility bill. So those are some of the reasons and options in front of the city. Obviously, raising taxes is a very difficult decision, so there are also conversations about service cuts. And we are preparing to bring out to the public for input what those service cuts could look like if the taxes aren't raised. And so as we look at, we do have some models that have no additional revenue other than that 95-cent property tax. In essence, and I will get to a map that shows this to you, but in essence it means that we're cutting about a third of the service in the city of Des Moines. So it's major cuts, and the way we get there, our staff has tried to not eliminate too many routes because we want to maintain some level of service, but we get there in a reduction of frequency, which is quite painful to a lot of riders. So it means that buses that are currently running 15 to 20 minutes a day would go to 30 minutes during the peak hours, during the busiest hours, and then 60 minutes. So it means that buses are only coming once an hour. And so if you have to transfer, if you have to plan for your trip, it'll greatly increase wait times. That said, we know, again, these are difficult decisions, and we need to share with the public what that could look like if we need to cut service. So again, this is a map that shows the service cuts here as a whole. Again, main thing to look at here is if you look at that green line of 20-minute or less service, and then the yellow line of 30 30-minute to 50-minute service. You can see that on this map. And on this map, you see that that green line goes to the yellow, which is 30 to 50 minute, and that yellow line becomes blue or purple, which means it's either an hour or more or only peak service. And then there is also, part of that would also include cutting the D line and the link, given ridership issues. Now, there's other conversations that need to be had given the link in the long term, so we're very aware there's a lot of agreements around that, but it is a low ridership route, and so it is one of those that we need to have more conversations on. So again, this is just modeling what potentially it would look like for us to get to that $7.7 million worth of cuts. So we have been talking about this with the commission for a while. We have had small group meetings with the City of Des Moines Council, and we will begin public input later this month. And then we're looking for the City Council to vote on the franchise fee sometime in January so that we can put together our budget in February and March and get it submitted by April as well. And then a service changes, if we need to change service, would start in November 24. Again, those are some of the decisions. And again, decisions I know that aren't necessarily in your hands, but you're going to hear more about, and so wanted you to understand some of the nuances and details of the conversation. Was there anything I can answer for you?
Well, I was around when we did those service cuts, and it's not very fun to do. People don't really understand it until it really hits them, the service cuts that they'll affect, mainly for people that need the social service aspects of it. It'll be, they'll have to plan accordingly, obviously. Now, all the other communities could go up to 95 cents, like Ankeny could, raise their levy to 95 cents, similar to what Broadlawn, DMAC, everybody else has a levy. It's the same. But doing that is like pulling a lot of molars out of your mouth. That's probably never gonna happen.
We gotta figure that out.
It would be nice.
Well, and I will say with that in mind, and I think some of us have talked, DART has been looking for years for other funding models. Most transit systems are not based on property taxes, because again, we should be looking at transit as a region, not as each community pays this much and gets this much. And so that's where the conversations with the legislature and others have started, is what are those other funding sources? You can see in the years to come that Windsor Heights and West Des Moines will hit that cap under the current formula. The current formula agreement came to about 3 years ago, and it was a decision by the commission that was facilitated through Scott Racker and others to try and come to some consensus. So I've said to others, we can always revisit the formula. That was an 18-month conversation. So we can't solve that conversation before these budget decisions need to be made. But I really truly believe that in the end, the better answer than the property tax is a different source of funding, and that's something we are continuing to figure out how to do.
Right. Yeah, we had that, I think they talked about a lot of different ways to fund it.
Yeah, there's lots of different ways.
Where do you stand on your equipment, the age of the fleet, in terms of your overall, how do you stack up against other agencies in other cities?
Yep. So the average age of a large heavy-duty bus is 12 years. And we've worked really hard over years to get to that, because that helps maintain the operating costs. When we get up to 13, 14, 15 years of useful life, we're spending more on the maintenance of it. So we were at a really good point. It has gotten a little bit tougher the last couple of years for a variety of reasons. And we are in the conversation right now as staff of needing to make some decisions on our next bus order to get us back to that 12-year. Right now, we're more at that 13 to 14-year.
Okay.
Are any of those electric buses, or are you looking
Yeah.
at that?
So we have a pilot of 7 electric buses. Unfortunately, they are not running right now. And we always learn from pilots. It is not a technology issue. I will say that. It has nothing to do with them being electric buses. The buses themselves, meaning the body and chassis and other things, are having issues that were costing us a lot in maintenance. And so when the warranties were coming to an end, we pulled them off the road so that we weren't spending money maintaining them. That wasn't covered by the manufacturer. And we've been working with the manufacturer to come to a solution, and then the manufacturer went bankrupt. So the bus manufacturing business is in a difficult situation. We are not the only transit agency. There's a lot of transit agencies that are struggling with this, but they are going through the process, the bankruptcy process, and so there's some things that are being waited on to determine next steps, and we're trying to figure out the best use of those buses and funding and process going forward. I do believe that we need to continue to evaluate zero-emission vehicles, and we need to continue forward on that path, but it does come with a cost, and when we're having these operating cost challenges, getting the support to spend the money on zero emission at this point is challenging. So there will be more conversations with each bus order. I will not be surprised. I think our next bus order will likely be diesel until we figure out a little bit more on our path forward and transition plan. Certainly this presidential administration, a lot of the money does relate to zero emission funding or zero emission transitions. And so we do have a zero emission plan and are committed to that. It's a matter of the local match and other money to support that in the years to come.
Anything else for Amanda?
Thank you for accepting the job.
Thank you for offering it. I appreciate it.
The first time and the second time.
Steve interviewed me my first time, so you can blame him. So,
We're happy to have you.
thank you very much, and please feel free to reach out if you have any questions or you're hearing anything from residents that you need help answering.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Next up, we got Ted Corrigan from Waterworks. You're up.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity. I do want to mention that I'm joined here today by Christina Murphy, who is the general manager at West Des Moines Waterworks, Dale Atchison, who's the general manager at Urbandale Waterworks, and Amy Kaler, who's the CFO. My name is Ted Corrigan, and I am the CEO at Des Moines Waterworks. We wanted to share an update with you planning for the creation of our cooperative entity that will oversee treatment of drinking water here in the Des Moines metro area. Has literally been going on since 2017, and we're making great progress. We want to give you an update. I think we're getting close, but before I give you the status, I wanted to remind you what it is exactly that we're doing and talk a little bit about why, because I think it's really important that everyone understand why are we doing this. We are in the process of creating an intergovernmental agency, an overarching entity that will manage source, treatment, and transmission of drinking water in basically all of Polk County, the Des Moines metro area, cooperatively. This is an entity that would have a representative board with representatives from each of the communities that are part of the organization, much like WRA, if you're familiar with their model. Have a very narrow scope of responsibility for sourcing and treating the water and then delivering it wholesale to each community. They would also set a unified wholesale rate that would be paid by all of the communities, the same rate or the same basis of rate for everyone who is a member of Central Iowa Waterworks. And as importantly as what it is going to be, what it is not going to be, or what it's not going to do, is not going to replace Des Moines Waterworks. It's not going to replace the local water agencies that repair the infrastructure, that maintain the infrastructure, that set the local rates in each city or for each community. That will all still be done at the local level. So this is very much a regional wholesale entity that we're talking about. The local retail entities will remain and continue to have responsibility for that day-to-day interaction with individual customers. So that's what we're going to do. Now, why are we going to do that, or why are we trying to do that? And there are three primary reasons for that. Number one is best management of the available water resources here in Central Iowa. Number two is fair and equitable distribution of the cost of producing drinking water. And number three is resiliency and ensuring that we have the water we need for everyone here in the Des Moines metro area. Now, when we talk about managing the resource, we are blessed here in Des Moines that we have two rivers that normally provide an abundant supply of water for everyone in Central Iowa. But I think the last 4 years of drought really punctuate that we need to manage those resources very effectively if we're going to ensure that everyone has the water that they need. Just in the last 5 years, communities, including West Des Moines and Urbandale, have been looking at other sources of water. They've gone upstream on both the Des Moines and the Raccoon River to see if they could source water more effectively and more efficiently than we're doing it locally. In a normal year, that's not a problem at all. There's plenty of water. But in a drought year, that can cause challenges. It could even cause conflicts. And we don't want to have conflicts with our neighbors. We need to manage that resource jointly and cooperatively to ensure there's a share and share alike mentality where everybody has the water that they need. When there are shortages, we all work together to get through those types of shortages. So managing that resource is the number one reason. Cost is the second reason. If communities begin to build their own independent water treatment plants, those treatment plants are going to use the newest technology. They're going to be the most efficient, most cost-effective facilities in the metro, but they're going to capture those efficiencies for those communities. Through Central Iowa Water Works, we can capture that efficiency for everyone, and we can share those costs. Our analysis shows very clearly that the lowest total cost of water can be obtained through regional production of water, and so we want to take advantage of that and share those cost-effective, more efficient facilities across the metro so that everyone pays that same unified rate for water. And then related to the third thing, resiliency, over the years we have created a very resilient water supply system here in the metro. We have 3 treatment plants that all deliver water to the same grid, and all of the communities that purchase water from Des Moines are served by that same grid. So if there's a problem with one of the plants, the other plants can continue to provide water to everyone. Again, if communities begin to build independent facilities, those facilities likely will not be on that same grid. So if there's a problem, they're not going to be able to serve. We want to continue that model where we have the most resilient possible drinking water supply system for the entire metro area. So that's really what this is about, those 3 primary things. So where are we? Really, the heavy lifting on this deal has been done by a small group that included representatives from Des Moines Water Works, West Des Moines Water Works, and Urbandale Water Utility. We've worked over the last couple of years pretty diligently, first to create a framework, a conceptual framework within which we believed we could create a regional entity. So we got buy-off on that framework. We worked to develop a detailed Chapter 2080 agreement, a cooperative agreement that would create Central Iowa Water Works and defines exactly how that would work. Now, over the last 2 years, a number of drafts of that have been created, circulated to all of the potential member communities, 13 in all. This has taken some time, back and forth, trying to meet the needs of everyone who's interested in participating. It's a bit of an iterative process because we have to know who's in before we know exactly what the financial model will look like. And people want to know what the financial model is going to look like before they're in. And so there's been a little bit of back and forth, but we've gotten to a pretty good core group here now that we think is interested. On the 15th of September, we issued what we referred to as the 3rd and final draft of this 2080 agreement. People are taking a final look at it. We've asked all of the communities to pass a resolution of intent indicating that, yes, we've seen it, it is our intent to join, and we want to be part of the final financial model that's going to be developed. The Des Moines Water Works Board passed that resolution at their meeting last night. The cities of Ankeny, Clive, and Polk City have already passed that resolution. We expect the rest of the communities who are interested in participating to pass a similar resolution during the first 2 or 3 weeks of November. So we're getting really close. Once we have knowledge of exactly who's going to participate based on passage of those resolutions, we can complete the agreement finalize the financial model, and hope to have the agreement ready for execution either in December or January. Now, once we have an executed agreement, Central Iowa Waterworks will exist, but that's just the beginning. Each community will have to identify their board member, the board will have to be seated, they're gonna hire an executive director, and they're gonna spend probably a year getting set up and establishing the processes and procedures they need to have in place prior to operational commencement, which is when they will actually start becoming the entity that oversees production of drinking water. So that's probably another year from now when operational commencement actually happens and this is in effect, but we're getting really close to that first step. I will share that 2 potential member communities have already indicated that they will not be participating. That would be Altoona and Bondurant. They believe that they can either continue to provide their own water supply, as is the case in Altoona, or develop a new water supply more cost effectively than they can join. So, but the rest of the communities in the metro are on board. All of the current customers of Des Moines Waterworks, plus Grimes, they're also at the table and look like they'll be joining. And I think I'll stop there and see if you have questions or if there's more information we could provide, or questions for any of the other folks.
I just got a quick clarification, Ted. So, are the only 2 water treatment facilities, Des Moines Waterworks and West Des Moines, that are currently producing drinking water for the region?
Des Moines Waterworks has 3 water treatment plants, one on Fleur Drive, one at Maffett Reservoir, and one near Saylorville. West Des Moines has a treatment plant on Railroad Avenue. Polk City actually has a small treatment plant. They produce a portion of their own water, which will also become part of this regional entity. And Grimes has their own supply, which will become part of the regional entity too.
How's that structured? So, I'm trying to figure it. So, during the floods of '93, when Waterworks went down, Altoona's got their own aquifer out there that they tap into.
Altoona uses a deep aquifer.
Okay.
Yep, and they still do.
So is that their reason for not wanting to join or participate regionally?
You know, I hesitate to say what the reason is. I think that they value independence, frankly, and think that maybe they can do their own thing more cost effectively, but beyond that, I don't know.
But they still buy water from Des Moines Waterworks.
Altoona buys water from Des Moines Waterworks during peak times in the summer, so they'll peak off of Des Moines Waterworks.
Their infrastructure's tapped into all the infrastructure.
It is.
Okay. All right.
So Ted, if you got a grid you're gonna be serving, right? And let's say that you wanna expand the grid, and I'm trying to think of somebody who's not part of the grid, let's just say Perry for sake of argument.
Sure.
You wanna come in, then the board would make that decision, Perry would have to pay money to come in, right? I mean, is that how that would work?
That is how it would work, and I can tell you that there's significant financial advantage to joining today if you're interested in joining, similar to what Grimes is doing. Perry would have to pay, they would have to pay the cost of the infrastructure to get a connection to them. They would have to pay the cost of any capacity that they needed from the system, and then they would have to pay a fee on top of that, which would be determined by the board. But
If
yes, they would have to
Follow
pay.
some rural water district, that'd be their problem to fix, right?
I'm sorry.
Ran afoul of some rural water district.
Oh, if they ran afoul of, yeah,
They'd be theirs to fix, not yours.
that would be theirs to fix, right?
All right, good.
Yes, yes.
You mentioned earlier, Ted, about other communities and possibly building their own water treatment facilities or whatever as part of or separately from the new governing body. So, would we not have the capacity for current or projected growth with the current treatment facilities that we have?
The current facilities that we have in the metro collectively, we're approaching the capacity of those facilities right now. The metro is experiencing significant growth. But we're also deep in the process of expanding one of our existing treatment plants. And all of the communities who are going to join will have an allocation of that capacity that they will receive. We're also already starting to talk about the next expansion of capacity. And so one of the beauties of this process is that as we expand, communities can pay for or purchase, if you will, the capacity they need instead of building, you know, a $150 million plant of their own and having all that cost themselves. Everybody kind of gets the slice they need. But we need to expand capacity in the metro either through independent, disconnected facilities or through jointly constructed facilities that we will share.
Okay, all right, thanks.
We wanted to provide an update and just, you know, we don't really need anything from the board, but we would welcome the board's support or endorsement of this process if that's a possibility, and if there was the ability for the supervisors to provide some sort of resolution of support, we'd be happy to provide an example, and for your consideration, we'd very much appreciate that. But I don't know if that's a possibility.
You know, I frankly, I think it's great. I think it's great the work that you're doing. It's something we needed to have done in the region for a long time. And I knew I was on board here when we first started the new governing body for WRA.
Right.
How complicated and difficult it was getting everybody on board, but we knew, you know, that with that facility out there, it's probably a similar structure to that two-tiered governmental body they have over there. I know EJ had a huge interest in seeing this happen, this whole regional water thing, so.
Yeah.
He's
still there.
I support the whole concept of it, and I don't know any reason why we wouldn't want to say that out loud. It's all gonna be in the details, how you all get it done and how all the different jurisdictions participate, or some that don't, what have you. And maybe we can help with that too, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know, I can't speak for everybody, but I think we all know people who have been working on this, from Urbandale, West Des Moines, including the EJ Giovanetti, our former supervisor friend, been heavily involved in this, and so I think we're all kind of familiar with people that have been working on it, so we're kind of up to speed on it a little bit. This has been great today, though, getting caught up on it, but I agree with Tom. I think it's something that we should definitely support and encourage people to be part of it.
Would it be appropriate for me to work with John on possibly some sort of a formal resolution? Is that a possibility, or?
Everybody good? What's that?
Yeah, we could have a look and.
Find out. If not, we'll update it.
And maybe send it to Altoona and Bondurant.
Yes. Let's just have a visit. All right.
Indeed. That's what I have. Anything else from the group? Thank you for your time very much.
Thanks a lot.
Ted.
Appreciate it, Ted. And I think Jen's up next.
We decided since water was the topic of the day, that we'd have Jen give you an update too. This whole conversation, though, is pretty indicative of how we have to start
Right.
watching water.
Right. Morning.
Good morning. Jennifer Terry here to tell you about the Central Iowa Source Water Research Assessment. Really rolls off the tongue, right? So CISWRA. So I'm going to start off with a 5-minute video about CISWRA that our communications department created for us the past few weeks, which I'm really happy about, that we're going to be sharing with partners. So I'll let Sarah cue that up. Thank you.
They are our most valuable natural resources in central Iowa, our rivers and streams. The confluence of the Des Moines and Raccoon Rivers and tributaries make up more than 250 miles of shoreline in Polk County alone. These rivers are an incredible natural gift to Iowa residents. There's just one problem.
We have to be aware of what is happening to our water supply. It's so critical. I call it our Achilles heel in Iowa. If we don't address water, it's going to have a long-term impact on the state.
For this reason, Polk County is taking the unprecedented step of conducting a multi-year assessment of the two rivers the region depends upon, the Des Moines and the Raccoon.
I am so excited to have been brought on board by Polk County to oversee this project. And the state of Iowa has a lot of beauty, but it also has some problems with pollution. And it's really important that we grapple with those from a scientific standpoint and figure out ways to make our rivers better.
Jennifer Terry has spent the past decade as a water quality advocate in Iowa. She has been tapped by Polk County to lead the Central Iowa Source Water Research Assessment, or CISWRA for short, a 2-year water quality improvement project, summarizing existing scientific data into one usable report that will essentially provide a roadmap outlining what pollutants of concern are in the Des Moines and Raccoon rivers as they flow through central Iowa.
My goal for this project is to, at the end of the day, come up with usable information, not a report that sits on a shelf, but a useful roadmap that municipalities and residents of Polk County and other watersheds and decision makers and policy makers can use to restore and protect our rivers.
To assist in this effort, Terry and Polk County have enlisted a team of renowned scientists from throughout the United States to create an unbiased, comprehensive look at our source water systems. Together, this team of scientists brings a wealth of experience in areas such as hydrology, ecology and habitat, water chemistry, microbiology, and recreational water quality.
We have everybody we need to understand the problem and to predict where we're headed in the future and figure out what we can do to make the water a lot better for drinking, for the ecology, and for recreators.
I think what's really unique about this project is the collection of people from across the state and more broadly to really make a meaningful difference both for the streams and rivers themselves, but also, of course, all the communities both in the headwaters upstream, but also here in Des Moines.
Being in Okoboji for the last 7 years, I've seen what a community can do when they really invest heavily in protecting water quality. We see people moving to the area, we see investment economically, and so my goal and my interest is sort of taking that Okoboji model and seeing that happen here in Polk County.
This project is very carefully designed so that we have unbiased information, unbiased assessment of the data sets that have been collected from a wide variety of sources.
We don't come with an urban agenda or a rural agenda, but we do come with a science agenda. And so what I really like about the assemblage of this group of scientists and specialists is that, it's built on the basis of science and understanding the current status of water quality in central Iowa and making recommendations about what should be done toward the future.
So, why is this team assembled now? For one thing, Polk County has always viewed water quality as an important priority for the community. Federal funds became available, allowing the county to make this investment.
With our American Recovery Act dollars, we chose water quality as a high priority because it is essential for public health and also for economic development. The importance of water for this community and the threat to our water supply made this a high priority.
A priority made even more time sensitive as the community prepares to invest more than $100 million on the new Icon Water Trails project, which will bring thousands of visitors to our waterways in the coming years. A critical investment in our natural resources for Polk County, its residents, and far beyond.
That's impressive.
Well done. Leading the way.
2 movie stars and one video.
John. Yeah, they did a really great job on that, so I appreciate that. I'm gonna grab So I just have a few slides here as an update. So, first of all, just a refresher on what CISWRA is, the 2-year water quality project. So how is this different than other reports or articles or studies that have been done about the 2 rivers? So this is different. Over the past 10, 15, 20 years, there's all kinds of scientific reports and analyses and plans done in the Des Moines and the Raccoon River watersheds. But this is one where we are doing sort of a summary of what do we know about the rivers in terms of microbiology and hydrology and chemistry and ecological health. And so the focus of our project is to understand what the rivers look like in terms of water quality for a safe drinking water source, for ecological health and habitat. So we know a lot of people fish, subsistence fish downtown here in Des Moines. Also for recreation infrastructure. So we just heard about growing communities and how important safe water is for growing communities and icon water trails, for example. So the deliverables at the end of the day, just as starting at the end and going backwards. So at the end of this project, our scientists, I believe we have 16 scientific advisors on this project that we recruited earlier this summer. And by the way, I am absolutely thrilled at the people that we got that are on the list. They're the people who know the most about these rivers, the most about the types of constituents in these rivers. They're with the United States Geological Survey, all kinds of academic institutions, and a private laboratory from Chicago. So it's a pretty great group. So at the end of the day, they're going to right now conduct the analysis of what do we know is in the rivers. They're going to give me content to write from their perspective into this assessment. So next year, it's going to be my job to corral content coming from 16 researchers, and we're going to put that into a document. It will probably be pretty lengthy. It could be 200-300 pages long. So it's not going to be totally a scientific journal article. It will be digestible by the general public, but also it will be a fairly easy read, and it will include actionable steps for folks like you, the supervisors, for folks at Central Iowa Water Works, anybody who's interested in natural resources and planning for those here in the metro and in our county. So it's going to consist of an assessment as well as a white paper or sort of an executive summary that will be an easy read for folks. And also, the scientists have been tasked with coming up with recommendations as a result of all of this analysis. So not only do they have to tell us what they know about what's in the rivers, they have to give us recommendations for how to improve water quality. So action steps. For example, John Swanson and Rich Leopold meet with me every month and say, we want to know how this is going to affect us and what we would need to know about this. So please keep people like us in mind when you're doing this assessment. We want to know what we should be doing to make decisions. So key highlights thus far, again, we recruited our scientific advisors. They came here in July for a strategic planning session. During those 2 days, they hammered out their guiding principles for this project. And they also have designed a plan. They split up into their different teams. So we have them all split up into the 4 different areas of focus, and that's where they're concentrating their areas of analysis. We have a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Iowa, Dr. Anderson, who is spending half of his time actually supporting the project. So whenever a scientist says, hey, I need the data sets from Des Moines Waterworks or whomever, he goes out and grabs those from Jeff Mitchell, the laboratory manager, or someone that posts them on our shared platform. And so all of the scientists are looking at those data sets all the time. And so we have weekly meetings, one-on-one, we have monthly group meetings, and then we have a couple more scheduled in-person meetings just to keep everybody sort of corralled and headed in the same direction. So in terms of how we're going to talk to the public and our stakeholders and partners and collaborators about this, the key highlights of the public relations and communication strategy that we've come up with John and John Cahill, we want to be sure that everybody understands this is a transparent process, and I hope that came through in the video. We don't want people to think that we're cherry picking urban, rural, whatever. Our scientists are looking at all the pollutants of concern in the 2 rivers. Also, we want to invite participation. So we've been meeting with people like Des Moines Waterworks and the Center for Health Effects of Environmental Contamination in Iowa, and the Iowa Soybean Association, and all kinds of groups telling them about the project, and then asking if they want to share their data sets. And so far, everyone has said yes, from the Department of Natural Resources to soybean to all kinds of people in between. They all seem very happy to share their data, which is wonderful. We also want to build awareness in the community about river quality. We also want to have public education about where we're headed with this project, but also what it means for the metro and what it means for the county and the people who live here and the growing communities. And then, of course, we want to have people recognize that the county supports clean water in such a major way. So how will we do this? Our tactics will include traditional TV and radio interviews, also blog posts, letters, social media. We're going to present to, Taylor and I are going to help write some abstracts next year. We hopefully will get on the agenda of some water conferences in the next 12 to 18 months. Probably some hearings at the State House, possibly. Anybody who's interested in hearing what is the result of this analysis. Other municipalities, for example, Central Iowa Water Works. I'm also thinking that we'll have some unveilings in the watersheds because this report will be of interest to people up in the watersheds. So for example, maybe the city of Storm Lake will have an unveiling of the assessment up there, or in Webster City or somewhere upstream of us. So I think we have some really interesting ways of presenting this, not only here in the metro region, but also upstream in the watersheds. So how are we going to do those tactics? Well, we're going to have this video and then a couple of shorter ones to share with our partners. We'll have the brief summary, the executive summary or white paper that has the recommendations, and then a variety of infographics that will be designed in-house, and PowerPoint presentations, etc. So at the end, I envision the report will be valuable to all kinds of groups and agencies and organizations, from Pheasants Forever and Trout Unlimited and Central Iowa Water Works and Heartland Farmers Cooperative that have been partners on ours in the future, as well as Polk County employees who work in these watersheds all the time and can use actionable steps on how to improve the water. So that is the end of my presentation today, and I appreciate your time today, and more importantly, I appreciate your support of this project. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer those.
I've got a couple quick ones, Jen. So,
Okay.
You know, you mentioned Jonathan Swanson and some of the work that we're doing on the smaller watersheds that we've already started and spent a lot of money and a lot of time on, 4 Mile, Walnut Creek, Mudcamp Spring and all, what have you. And you're talking about this study is going to be basically the Raccoon and the Des Moines River. Will any part of the data that you gather be source point identification of specific chemicals? The reason I ask that question is we've known over the years that, I mean, whether it's E. coli or nitrogen or algae plumes or all those things that we have in our water, we know what they're created by. So, as an example, if you got a small community upstream that doesn't have a wastewater treatment plant, and so that you know that you have failing septic systems in those communities that are, you know, getting into the watershed, and so you got E. coli. But I guess my point is identifying those point sources of the pollutants. You know, or are we just going to identify, okay, here's what's in it. Here's what's in it at the fork of the river, at the Raccoon, and at the Des Moines. Is that the data you're gathering?
Yeah, so my answer is yes. That's definitely what I envision. I'm really excited. We just had a meeting this week with some of the advisors. One of our visions is that we'll take the Icon Water Trails map and we'll map over some of our research over the top of it. And so, for example, maybe there's parts of the Icon Water Trails where they're just going to be kayaking. Well, nitrate doesn't really matter, you know, in terms of a kayak. However, if you're up in Beaver Creek where there might be a pathogen or something in the water that could be harmful, is that where children are going to be playing in the backwater. And so I think it'll be really cool if we can do some of that layered mapping. Another thing I'm excited about is that there's not a lot of data about fish, actually, like microplastics in fish tissue. And so I think what we're going to be able to do is pull from a lot of sources and not only say what we do know about fishing and how safe the tissue might be, but what we don't know. Because my sense is that there's not a lot of great data about that. And so that might be something for the future. And yes, point source will be included. So wastewater, NIPD's permits, all of that. Yep.
Yeah,
That's our
I'm just
vision
curious
anyway.
long-term, this is not going to be part of what you're doing, but, you know, some of the improvements, you know, we did a tour of the 4 Mile Creek watershed here some time back, and, you know, all the improvements that we've already made. You know, I'm from the area and I've been around it my whole life, so I can already see the improvements in that water quality. Matter of fact, I saw somebody fishing at Beaumont Creek the other day for the first time in many years, so I know we're making a difference there, but it's just such a small piece of the overall picture, you know, so,
Right.
okay.
Yep.
To kind of piggyback on that, are we gonna be monitoring the water quality, and so we know what's in there and how kind of progress we're making and so forth? I mean, that'll be part of the program, right?
Yeah, so what we're doing right now is just the analysis, and so if you look at these data sets that they're pulling, there's all kinds of stream flow. From stuff that Des Moines Waterworks has been doing for 100 years to the Department of Natural Resources and their ambient monitoring system. We have just a wealth of data sets. And so the data are out there. It's just us, our scientists, like identifying trends. And so there are the monitoring systems already in place. And one of the things I'm asking them to do is to come up with metrics as part of their report at the end of it, so that I want them and you to be able to come back in 5 years and say, okay, so we said these things, are they making a difference? So I would imagine that monitoring and continued monitoring would be part of that.
Right, and kind of to piggyback in on Tom's comment, you know, this water doesn't stay here, and what you're doing here is great, by the way. I just think it's tremendous, so I'm totally for it. But, you know, the water doesn't stay here. It comes from somewhere and goes somewhere. And so where it comes from, this report will be shared with them, where it goes to, right, Des Moines River flows into the Mississippi, which flows into the Gulf. So I think that would be important for communities to know downstream too, right?
Absolutely, yep. I mean, even reached out to the, actually the EPA Gulf Hypoxia Task Force people yesterday, and so I wouldn't be surprised if this report is picked up by the Gulf Hypoxia Task Force. I mean, we've got the Department of Agriculture and ISU Extension sending us data, so they're aware of it. So yeah, upstream and downstream for sure.
Great, thanks.
Anybody else, questions?
I would just point out, yeah, I think point source and a lot of the stuff we're doing now is more remedial that Jonathan's doing, you know. It's dealing with the water that we get and filtering and buffering and all the things we're doing, but if we don't impact what's happening upstream, that will eventually get saturated and we'll back to the same place we're at. But my main point is, again, like Jen said, thanks for supporting this. This is about 8% of all of our ARPA money we're spending on water quality on this report, which I think is pretty reasonable when you look at, we're trying to have an impact. We better have some science and data behind what we're doing that drives future change, so.
Sure.
I just think I appreciate it that you really drove this to us, so I appreciate that we're doing it and you gave us the go-ahead to make sure we did it, and thank you for joining our team. I think this is really significant and gonna make a huge difference to water quality, particularly, as you mentioned, we're spending millions in ICON, and people need to know, because we've heard it over and over again, well, what's in the river? And until we really know what's in the river, they're not going in it. So, and we are monitoring it. You know, Rich has a monitoring system, ICON's spending significant money, Sarah's on the safety team on it. So, I mean, we're doing it, but we really need to know all that data, and so I think it's awesome that we're doing it. I just appreciate we're spending the money.
And get it out to the public, that's the other piece. You know, once we know the water is safe and it's getting better, then we need to get that out to the public.
Right.
Nobody wants to jump in the river and come out with a big rash, at least they think that's
No,
gonna happen. at
we
least.
don't. So,
Thank you for that, I appreciate it.
and once again, the crack team did a great job on the video.
Wow, I can't say enough. John's been very supportive of me in this project along the way, and Taylor is my go-to in the office, so he's also done a great job, and as well as Sarah and the comms team, so I can't say, my welcome here has been great, so I really appreciate that.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.